Way back at the beginning of ChemKnits, I wanted to make a sampler afghan to teach myself how to do cables. The original pattern called for 20 squares, but after making a couple, I decided to be ambitious and planned to make a 30 square afghan, make a huge blanket with all of these samplers. I bought enough yarn to make 30 squares, but when I was about to hit 20, I decided enough was enough and that I should finish the blanket. Unfortunately, this meant that I ended up with a lot of skeins of off-white yarn, specifically Lion Brand Wool Ease yarn that is 80% acrylic, 20% wool. And I wanted to do something to transform this yarn. With over 10 balls of the yarn in my stash, I knew that I didn't want to make this many white accessories for my friends and family, but I wondered if there was a way that I could dye this yarn at home safely and easily to transform it. I started doing some research, and before you knew it, I was dyeing some yarn with KoolAid. And the rest, as you might say, is history. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I am filming the 35th episode of Dyepot Weekly. And to celebrate this milestone, I decided to take a look back at my first ever hand painting project, where I hand painted some of this Lion Brand Wool Ease with a variety of colors that I mixed to create this rainbow colorway. I kept meticulous track of the amount of both KoolAid and then the drops of food coloring I added to it to create the colors for this colorway. So I am confident that I would be able to reproduce this. I'm going to double the amount of the dyes that I mix, so that way I can hand paint this colorway both on this wool acrylic blend that is the Lion Brand Wool Ease, but also hand paint it onto some 100% wool, the wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn from Knit Picks. The colors should be much more vibrant on the wool, but I thought that it would be a really nice comparison to look at them together and to see how far I've come as a home dyer and teacher. This 35th episode of Dyepot Weekly is the last that is funded by my Kickstarter campaign from last fall. But even though this is the official end of the Kickstarter, it is still the beginning of what I hope will be years of this weekly dyeing series. So first things first, let's get this Wool Ease yarn out of the ball and wrap it around my niddy noddy. In my original dyeing projects, I wound the yarn around the back of the chair to prepare it for dyeing. Today I used a niddy noddy because it's a little more consistent and I'm a lot faster doing it that way. These two skeins have a very, very similar size. I did not rewind the Knit Picks one, but I think that I should be able to hand paint these in the same way pretty easily. There is another difference between these two yarns besides just the fiber content. The Lion Brand Wool Ease yarn is only 85 grams, and the Knit Picks Wool of the Andes yarn is 100 grams. So I'm still going to try to divide the dye pretty evenly over them, but we know that the colors are going to be way more vibrant on the 100% wool than the wool acrylic blend. As we get started mixing our dyes, I am going to pre-soak all of this yarn in some plain tap water, so that way the fibers are nice and wet and we'll be able to absorb the dye with ease. I ended up mixing a total of 12 different colors for this original colorway. I started with the primary colors, 1 packet of Lemonade, 2 of Cherry, and 2 of Ice Blue Raspberry Lemonade, and I dissolved each of these in a 1/4 cup of water. Since I'm doubling everything, today I'm going to start with 4 of the blue, 4 of the red, and 2 of the yellow. I'm not entirely sure why I started with less lemonade, and my inclination would be to use less cherry and more lemonade. However, I am trying to replicate the results, so I am going to follow these original recipes. But I have a feeling that I just happen to have less lemonade present in my stash. After we mix these colors, which have citric acid, so that way the food coloring can bind to the yarn, then I added different mixtures of McCormick's food coloring in both the neon colors and the standard colors to get a bunch of different colors. I'm gonna start by dissolving all these Kool-Aids into half a cup of water. After I mixed the 3 colors, then I added, in the original, about 10 to 12 milliliters of each of the primary colors into 3 containers. So I'm now gonna add around, I guess, between 20 and 24 milliliters to each of them. So I started with, you know, some blues, yellow, and red, and then I added these other food colorings to it to sort of create, I guess, different secondary colors. So I named each of the colors 1, 2, 3, 4. So I had blue 1, blue 2, blue 3, blue 4. And then after I finished mixing the secondary colors, I took, I guess, forkfuls of all of the colors onto a paper towel and added it just to see what the colors looked like. And I used that to help me sort of divide things up, so that way I could put things roughly in rainbow order. Today I'm not planning to double check the colors to redefine the order, but instead I will go off of the order that I used last time and arrange things accordingly. Oops. So I'll be back when I've got about 20 mils of each color in the little cups. I think one useful thing about having the colors measured this way is that I know that I will add about 10 mils of each color to each skein once we actually start painting. I will include all of these recipes in the video description and then the final order that we sort everything into. All right, so let's start with blue number 1. And in each case, the 1 is the one, I referred to it as a big cup, but it had the most volume left over. So in blue number 1, I'm going to add 10 drops of McCormick's Neon Blue. Okay. Blue number 2 is 5 drops of Neon Purple. Blue 3 is 8 drops of Neon Pink and 5 drops of Neon Blue. It's 8 drops of pink and 5 drops of blue. Okay. And then blue number 4 is 5 drops of green. So what I did, all right, here, and funnily, the purple is looking a bit, some of these food colorings are a little old, but I'm just sort of swirling these colors to mix them up. All right, you can see that the purple is a little clumped, but the shade actually looks like pretty good against what I had originally mixed. Okay, so for yellow number 1, we're going to do 10 drops yellow. Hopefully I have enough yellow food coloring left. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Okay. Yellow number 2 is 5 drops neon green. Yellow number 3 is 2 drops yellow, 2 drops, okay, so let's see, this one is 2 drops yellow, 2 drops neon green, and then 2 drops green. See, there wasn't really much of a rhythm to this. I was just sort of, I'm not sure what my thought process was behind the colors. But I do know that we got a really pretty colorway. So yellow number 4 is 3 drops of yellow, 5 drops of red. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. number 1, we have 10 drops of red. 1, 2, 3. Okay. For red 2, 4 drops of blue. So that's not the neon blue, that's just the blue. Red number 3 is 5 drops of yellow. And then red number 4, oh goodness. And red number 4 is 6 drops of neon blue. So I think you realized why I just said, oh goodness. So in doing this, I had just doubled the volume and the base of it, but I did not double the number of drops of food coloring I just added. So I'm gonna need to go back in and add what I just added all over again. So that way these colors are equivalent to what I did the first time. And so I'll make sure that the total number of drops that are in each of them are up to date in the video description. And I'll also link to the blog post where I had my original recipes. Now that the colors are mixed with their appropriate volume, this is apparently the order used. Alright, so I started with red 1, red 2, red 4, blue 2, blue 3, blue 1, blue 4, and I'm going to need to sort of put these closer. So that's blue 4, then yellow 3, yellow 2, yellow 1, yellow 4, and red number 3. And that is our rainbow of colors. So without even putting things on paper towels, you can see how this sort of goes nicely. And so now I am going to wipe down the surface and get ready to start hand painting these yarns. So in my notes, I said that I did not blot out all the water from the pre-soak to help the colors spread better. So, you know, I would be able to squeeze a little more water out of these, but I'm hoping that my notes are just good, because we'll see if I'm able to get the dye through. I have plastic wrap down on my work surface, which we will use when we're done with the hand painting to help wrap up the yarn. I'm painting the same colorways, but I'm planning to, in this section, have, say, the same colors sort of touch each other, because since I have limited space, that should just help as I am doing this. But let's start with our red. And I can actually make a tiny bit of space in between them. There we go. But okay, I guess this is the amount of red that would just go onto one. So I don't have very many pictures in progress, so I'm just going to sort of go for it and do my best. But as you're adding the color, you do want to make sure that you have good color penetration all the way through. And so it's nice that we're using wool, yeah, that's going all the way through, wool versus, say, a superwash yarn where the colors might strike faster, because that gives us time to do this. And then once I've added all of the colors, then we'll sort of go back through and push colors together as needed. But I am starting off because I just want to make sure that we've got pretty good penetration through the skein. But the excess water that I do have in here is helping. The only problem with sort of massaging things as we go is that it means that I'm going to need to wet my hands off a bit more frequently. But there are worse problems when you're dyeing yarn. Okay. And I have a little bucket of water so that way I can rinse off my syringe in between different colors. Okay, so next, I'm going to move this cup of red so I don't end up sort of getting it all over myself. Okay. So this is a nice sort of dark color. Actually, I can kind of insert the color a bit on the inside. Maybe I will go through. It's possible I'm not starting close enough. It's not like I've really calculated how much color. How far to go. There's a hint left, so if there's white spots on the other side, I should be able to take care of that. But yeah, I think I'll try to go as close as I can with each color. Okay, we're getting pretty good penetration. I should be able to move things through as we go. All right, here is our next color, which hopefully the syringe won't have much trouble. Oh, this one sort of looks like grape Kool-Aid. There we go. Oops. Yeah, this shade is way more sort of purpley gray. I hope that I'm making enough space for each of these colors, but do the best that I can. But I'll do the first few colors at like normal speed, and then I'll probably speed this up as I go because the same sort of stuff applies wherever I am adding the color. Probably should have mapped this out a bit better to see if I've really got, oh no, I guess I've only, no, that is my fourth color. See if that's been a third of the colors, but you actually do see some breaking over there, which is pretty nice. Yeah, so there are some droplets left so that I can use if I need to fill things back in. But I will. The good thing is that when I squish it, you see the color come around, and so that's good because that means that I'm able to move it so I can get good color penetration in that region. I think I need to start making each of the other color segments a bit bigger, but at least we know that I need the next 4 to sort of end up at that end for things to work out well. But since I started with the big red, I can also extend that a little further. So it's sort of good that we're working this way because I can extend the red as needed as we get over there. So I decided that I'm going to add a tiny bit more red to both of these skeins. I'm going to add an additional 5 milliliters of the red to each of them. Just extend this because I think I'd made my sections a tiny bit too small. There. And then when I get to the other primaries, I'll also do 15 milliliters instead of the 10 that I'm doing on the other colors. The color sections are going to be different sizes from the original, but it's the mixed colors that are the same. And now I think I'm going to speed things up as I move through and apply the dye to the colorway in this same way that I've been doing all along. We have roughly painted our gradient, and it's pretty cool. I still need to cover some of these white patches by massaging the dye around and potentially adding some additional color if needed. But yeah, I think that we can get started on that now. And so this will also help blend things, because in addition to making sure we have good color penetration, we can sort of make some of these color transitions less stark by sort of pressing the dye in between regions. Now we do see some breaking around this one purple, and you know, I'm actually surprised, well, not really that surprised, but it's interesting that there's not even more breaking around, but I think that this will be really, really beautiful. But you can see that even just by, whoops, you want to be careful as you do this so you don't fling your colors up, but you know, it does lead to something that is more, a little more gradual and less harsh. Yeah, but you know that when you squeeze the colors out and you see the color liquid sort of show up, that you still don't have, the colors have not yet bound, which is why we are able to sort of do this. Yeah, the color penetration is ultimately pretty good. Sort of lets us get this more of a yellow orange that we didn't have before. I'm going to go around the other side, continue, sort of starting with the blue. And then I'm not wiping my hands in between each of these color transitions now because I'm sort of, you know, gradually increasing the amount of yellow. but I think that this is really nice. I think that if you were gonna plan a balanced rainbow, you could do a bit better. This one's a bit heavy on some of the purples and greens, but I do think that given that I was sort of going off the cuff when I was mixing all these colors, it is really, really nice. Let's check. Yeah, so in here, yeah, we've actually got really nice color penetration for both of these shades. And there, I think we've got our rainbow. I'm now wiping up some of these colors that have spilled, and I'll need to remove the cups. But I think we're about ready to start preparing these for some microwaving. This is a time where a press and seal wrap would start to come in handy. But I'm going to start by sort of trying to separate the center of these skeins a bit. Now I don't mind, say, if these are pushed together, because those are the same colors that are in there. But I want to try as best as I can to keep these red colors out of the rest of the skeins. So I'm going to start by adding some additional plastic wrap. If I was using maybe a superwash yarn or something that I knew had more, that would bind the colors easier, I would be a bit less concerned. But I know that there's a lot of liquid in here, and so I'm hoping to sort of seal in and separate the colors from one another as best I can. I mean, some people have said, well, oh, why don't you use press and seal wrap? That would probably be a good choice, but you know, I could also do more to, rather than sort of pressing in the middle. I think originally I sort of wrapped the yarn up a bit, but I'm just sort of trying to add an extra layer of protection. In general, I do try to not overuse the plastic wrap, but I am sort of doing this recreation today, so hopefully this will work out. All right. And folding up from the bottom, I'm actually going to wrap you underneath a little bit. Folding these ends over. All right, so we've got this encased, and now we're going to start sort of rolling this gently, trying not to squeeze it into a jelly roll. And you can see that we did get really nice color penetration through to the wrong side. Some areas aren't quite perfect, but it is pretty good. And then again, without squeezing too much, I'm going to place this on a plate and start microwaving it. I am going to microwave this on high and start with a 2-minute increment. Originally, I heated the yarn in the microwave on high for 5 minutes, then I waited, and then I did another 5 minutes. This time I'm going to do 2 minutes, check to make sure everything is still good, and then do 2 additional 2-minute increments for a total of 6 minutes. The reason why I do it in small increments is, 1, I want to make sure that things don't dry out and that everything remains wet, so I don't overheat the yarn. But also I want to make sure that it ends up being really hot to touch, so then we know that the colors can bind to the yarn. After the total of 6 minutes, the yarn is very hot to the touch, so I am going to let it sit and cool. I do see some water that's sort of squished out towards the bottom, but I'm still going to try to not touch this and leave it as still as possible while it cools so that way we can unwrap and wash our yarns. The yarn is basically room temperature, and you see some color did leak. So I'm now going to try to get the yarn out of the plastic wrap. Whew. And quickly into a rinse bath before I change my hand's color too much. But check out all of these really, really pretty colors. I'm adding some lukewarm water right now because I just don't want to alter the color at all, but I don't want this to sort of sit in some of that dye that had pooled out of the plastic wrap either. So I'm going to let this sit for a second so I can clean up a tiny bit. Alright, let's take a closer look at our rinse water. Now, because there was some color on the plastic wrap, I'm expecting to see a tiny bit in the rinse, and it is sort of a hint of blue. But otherwise, these colors are staying in the yarn really, really nicely. We've got, in our wool, the colors are especially vibrant from our mixtures of KoolAid and food coloring. The colors are really nice in the line brand woolies, but they are noticeably less vibrant from their counterparts over here, like if you compare the blues. But, you know, we will rinse these a number of times to get out everything that's left, but color-wise, this color is staying in the yarn. I'm going to use some clear dish soap to help residual dye, excess dye to come out if applicable. This will also help with the rinsing of all of the flavoring and everything else that was present in the KoolAid packet. But our water is already clear. So now I just need to rinse out the soap and hang up the yarn to dry. Here are the finished dried yarns. And can you tell which one is the wool acrylic blend versus the 100% wool? The 100% wool, which is on the bottom, is significantly more vibrant than the 85 gram skein that is only 20% wool and 80% acrylic. If we look at the colors side by side, it's not just a depth of color difference, but there are differences in the actual hues. For example, the yellow looks a lot more orange on the blend versus the 100% wool. You can see some breaking in the purple, a little bit of both of them. And in this deepest purple, it reads very, very gray. I really don't feel very much of the purple in this section at all, whereas here we've got a gorgeous plum. If you look really, really closely at the acrylic fibers, you can see some heathering. This is because the acrylic is not absorbing any color, but the wool fibers in there are absorbing a lot of color. And so overall, this makes the yarn feel a lot paler, but it does give a really beautiful definition to the yarn overall. When you dye yarns with acrylic content, you can notice that the shape of the yarn can change when you apply heat. And this is usually because just if you have too much heat, the acrylic starts to melt a little bit. And so sometimes that can make the yarn feel a bit flat. Like here is an example where it's not quite as round as it once was. However, steaming in the microwave, the results are, I guess it's a bit better than some of the low immersion techniques where we're in near boiling water. Maybe because there's slightly less heat, I'm not quite sure. Either way, this yarn would be really, really nice to knit with. and I think is really beautiful overall. I think if you were to look at just the wool acrylic blend yarn, you would think, wow, that's a really, really pretty rainbow. And especially when you consider how white the yarn was when you started, you would feel that you added a ton of color. It's only when you compare it to the 100% wool that you realize that, oh, this really didn't absorb the color as well as I thought. Both of these skeins were dyed with the exact same amount of food coloring. And so technically, even since there's less weight to the wool acrylic skein, it absorbed a little bit more color. But that doesn't mean that the amount of color that was absorbed by the fiber registers in the final product. And so therefore we have a yarn that looks a lot paler even though we used the exact same amount of dye. Could you get a brighter color in the acrylic yarn if you were to double or triple the amount of dye that you used? Maybe. I've never really tried it. But at some point there is a limit to how much color your yarn can absorb, because ultimately there is a fraction of the amount of wool in this blend than there is in the top skein. I think that both of these colorways are awesome, and it was so much fun for me to recreate my first ever multicolored yarn. Although maybe I did some dip dyeing before I tried the rainbow hand painting, but I remember being so nervous the first time before I did this. And I was nervous I was going to stain my table and that it wasn't going to work and I would get a muddy mess. But I was so ecstatic with this yarn, and so it just made it all the more fun to try to recreate it today. I think that this project is a great example of how even when you use equivalent amounts of dye, the fiber type really makes a huge difference on the final color and the vibrancy that you end up with in your yarn. So therefore, it's important to pay attention to the fibers that you're using, and it can make a big difference in how to achieve a specific color result. I don't dye with acrylic blends very much anymore, but I do have a bunch in my stash now, and I plan to do a lot of different over-dyeing techniques to play around with some of these yarns that you can find in big box stores. So if you have a wool allergy but you can tolerate yarns with low wool content, you can still explore and get some amazing colorways using food coloring and KoolAid. As we finish off Dyepot Weekly episode number 35, I want to take a moment to thank all of my Kickstarter backers who believed in me enough to support this project and to encourage me to start sharing dyeing videos more regularly and really reach out and engage with all of you a lot more. You have provided me with so much inspiration that I have a huge list of dyeing videos I want to create. This might be the official end of my Kickstarter campaign, but it's only the beginning of what I hope is a future filled with many, many beautiful colors. To everyone who backed the Kickstarter campaign, and all of you that watch my videos, comment, reach out to me with questions and suggestions, thank you so much for your support. I look forward to where we go in the next 35 episodes of Dyepot Weekly. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you have not subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel, please do. You don't want to miss out on the fun dyeing adventures. Thanks for watching.